I stood in the driveway with the keys pressed into my palm, the metal still warm from the realtor's hand. For a long moment I just looked at the house in front of me, sunlight sliding across the white siding and wide windows. It didn't feel real yet, this place I used to sketch on napkins during lunch breaks while eating leftovers and pretending I wasn't tired. I had paid off $42,000 in student loans, saved $210,000 for the down payment, and worked through holidays while others posted vacation photos. Every late night, every quiet morning, every canceled plan had poured itself into these walls. Inside, the air smelled of paint and pine. The wood floors shone under the soft hum of the new ceiling light. My footsteps echoed as if the house were listening. I ran a hand along the doorframe, feeling the cool surface that now belonged to me. It wasn't luxury that made my chest tighten. It was ownership of something I had built without applause. The silence in the rooms didn't feel empty. It felt earned. I walked from room to room, imagining furniture I hadn't bought yet and dinners I might one day host. The walls caught the afternoon light and turned it golden. This was not a reward from anyone, not a favor or inheritance. It was proof that quiet work can outlast doubt. I exhaled slowly, letting the weight of the past years settle. The house stood still, waiting, as if it knew I had come home at last. I smiled, small and private, knowing this moment wasn't meant to impress anyone. It was meant to remind me that success built in silence can stand longer than any praise. I spent the entire afternoon preparing for them. The kitchen smelled of lemon and roasted garlic, just the way my mother liked. I simmered her favorite soup, set the table with the silverware she once said I was too young to own, and chilled a bottle of wine my father had once called extravagant. On the counter sat a tray of the chocolate tarts my brother used to ask for at every family dinner. I tied balloons along the stair railing, gold letters that spelled home, and turned on soft music to fill the silence before the laughter arrived. The house looked like a photograph of happiness, every corner polished, every detail in place. I wanted them to see that I had made it, not for revenge, but to share what my years of quiet effort had built. When the first hour passed, I told myself they were running late. By the second, I stopped checking the driveway. The pasta cooled. The soup thickened, and the bottle of wine began to sweat on the table. A single message blinked on my phone. "Sorry, busy tonight." I looked around the dining room, at the plates still empty and the candles burning low. The same house that cost $1.2 million suddenly felt hollow. The walls that had made me feel proud now seemed to echo with something colder. The music faded, but I left it playing, pretending for a moment that the sound of a singer's voice could replace the sound of family. As I cleared the table, I realized it wasn't about time or distance. It wasn't about being busy. It was about what my independence made them feel. My success didn't fit the version of me they had written. They had always been comfortable when I needed them, not when I stopped asking. The silence was no longer confusion. It was clarity. It was almost midnight when the knock came. The sound startled me because I had stopped expecting anyone. I opened the door to find my sister standing there, hair pulled back, jacket half-zipped, holding a plastic cake box with smudged frosting. She smiled the way people do when they want to skip the hard part. I stepped aside and she walked in without waiting for an invitation, her eyes scanning the room that still smelled faintly of candles and cold pasta. She said I was being dramatic, that no one meant to hurt me. "We were busy," she added, like it was a fact, not an excuse. I let her words hang in the air before answering. "Busy people make time for what matters." The tone of my voice surprised even me. It was calm, steady, and it cut through her attempt at small talk. She set the cake down on the counter and stared at the deflated balloons, the dishes I hadn't yet put away. I could see in her face that she hadn't come to apologize. She had come to soften the story, to rewrite the evening into something harmless. She told me I was taking things too seriously, that family should be above feelings. I told her love without respect is performance, not family. The space between us felt wide even though we stood a few feet apart. She looked down at her hands, twisting the strap of her purse, searching for something else to say. I decided not to rescue her from the silence. When she finally moved toward the door, I told her she could leave the cake if she wanted. She nodded, almost relieved, and slipped outside. The door clicked shut, quiet but final. I looked at the cake box on the counter and thought about how easy it is to offer sugar instead of sincerity. The house felt lighter, not lonelier. I had let her leave her cake behind, but not her guilt. 2 days later, he arrived unannounced, his car engine fading into the driveway like an echo from my childhood. He stepped out wearing the same dark suit he used to wear to board meetings, the tie slightly loosened but the expression still sharp. When I opened the door, his eyes moved past me to the furniture, the polished floors, the framed closing documents on the counter. He said he was proud, but his tone carried the weight of inspection more than praise. I offered him coffee, but he waved it off and got straight to the point. He said a house like this was a heavy responsibility. Property taxes alone could reach $15,000 a year, and maintenance costs were unpredictable. He said he hoped I had not rushed the purchase, that he could still help manage things before it became too late. I listened, keeping my hand steady on the mug I had made for myself. I told him I had already prepaid 2 years of taxes and insurance. The look on his face didn't change, but I saw the small twitch at his jaw. I explained that the home cost $1.2 million and that it was fully covered by 8 years of work. $980,000 from savings and employee stock, $50,000 from consulting projects, and the rest from closing bonuses. No loans, no inheritance, no family money. He called me paranoid, said no one was trying to control me. He told me I should be grateful for his advice. I told him gratitude is not obedience. He frowned, saying I was making this into a competition. I said it wasn't a competition when only one side holds the leash. The silence between us stretched. I could see in his face the confusion of a man used to being the final voice in every room. I told him I understood his concern, but that I was not collateral in anyone's plans anymore. He looked at me for a long time, his hands tightening on his briefcase, then turning toward the door. Outside, the porch light caught the lines around his eyes, making him look smaller than I remembered. He nodded once before walking to his car. I watched him drive away, the light fading from his tail lamps until the night took him. For the first time, I felt what freedom really costs. It was quiet, expensive, and worth every cent. The first rumor appeared 2 days after my father left. A distant cousin posted online that my house wasn't really mine, that my father had helped with the payment. Within hours, the comments spread across family circles and group chats I was no longer part of. People I hadn't spoken to in years joined the conversation, adding their own versions of the story. I watched it unfold quietly, not with anger, but with a strange kind of curiosity. It was like observing how far envy could travel once it found a signal. That night, I opened my laptop and gathered the documents I had kept since the day I signed the closing papers. The deed, the escrow proof, the wire confirmations, and the tax receipts. I blurred my account details and posted the images with a single line beneath them. Receipts are louder than gossip. There was no long caption, no emotional defense, just evidence, clean and clear. By morning, the post had spread far beyond my circle. Messages poured in from people I had never met. Some were first-time buyers who said the post gave them courage. Others were veterans and professionals who wrote that discipline doesn't need validation. One comment stood out from a real estate agent who said studies show 68% of first-generation homeowners face doubt or hostility from relatives. Reading that, I realized this story wasn't just mine. It was the quiet struggle of anyone who built without applause. The rumors eventually faded, but something else remained. Strangers respected what my family couldn't, yet the real reward wasn't their approval. It was knowing that truth doesn't need to shout. Dignity lives in silence, and the silence that night felt steady. Not empty. It was the sound of integrity settling into place. The rain came softly that night, tapping against the windows while I sat on the couch with a glass of wine. The same silence that once felt like punishment now wrapped around me like a blanket. I looked at the walls, the same ones that had witnessed disappointment and defiance, and they seemed to breathe with me. Every surface carried the quiet proof of effort. I no longer needed anyone's approval to know what this home meant. It was not a monument to success. It was evidence of patience, integrity, and faith in my own hands. A week later, the doorbell rang again. On the porch stood a woman holding her daughter's hand. She looked nervous, almost apologetic, and said they had seen my story online. She wanted advice on buying her first home. The little girl stared at the house with wide eyes, the same way I used to look at things I thought were impossible. I went inside, took a spare key from the counter, and placed it in her palm. Not to keep, I told her, but to remember that what you build with belief will last longer than what others give you. The girl smiled, clutching the key like it was gold. When they left, I turned off the lights except for one lamp near the window. Its glow spilled across the wet glass, reaching into the dark yard beyond. For the first time, I realized I had become the light my family refused to see.